We are here and we're requesting a positive recommendation because we also feel that there are no jurisdictional items other than a subsurface septic system, which the design has not been presented at this time. That will be part of the construction, the next step during the development phase. And we will comply with the Title V regulations at that point. There's no municipal water. It's a Houstonic Water Works will be servicing. We've just submitted a letter that states that they can service. That was requested by the planning board during site plan review, and that was submitted today as part of their packet. The other, the jurisdiction of the Board of Health is very limited. There are no Board of Health regulations regarding marijuana. It's not a health emergency. There's no well, no food service, no lodging, no public pools on site, no recreational campgrounds, no residential housing, no tobacco, no investigation of a nuisance complaint because we're not operational at this point, no communicable diseases, and no beach waters. So there are ability for, under Mass General laws, for the Board of Health to regulate some items, but it gives you the authority to create a bylaw for regulation. And at this point, there is no regulation, so other than the septic system, it's our position that it's non-jurisdictional, and we're just requesting a statement be sent along to the select board that states it's non-jurisdictional. I'm here today with Fulcrum Enterprises and also SK Design, so if there was any questions, I know SK can answer some general questions about the septic system, but the design is not presented at this point.
Thank you. Rebecca, are you of the same mind that there's no jurisdictional issues here, other than the septic?
Yes, I am.
Sure. Do you have any questions, Peter or Ruby?
I do. I actually have quite a few questions. So, Board of Health is there to protect the health of the citizens of this town. Is that correct?
Are you asking me that question?
Yes.
It's not my position that is, there's not broad powers. There's powers by Mass General laws, and that's not, you have the authority to create bylaws if bylaws and regulations are sought to be necessary, and there are no marijuana bylaws. Do you have the ability to create those bylaws? I would assume you do, but there are no bylaws. So at this point, this board has no jurisdiction on marijuana because it's not one of the enumerated items in Mass General laws.
I do have concerns, and I would like to voice them. I would like to get more information about the odor issue, because I do know that the substance that are used to control the odor has been used in other septic systems, but not really, I don't know what it is. It's proprietary, so I don't really know what's in it. And I'm not quite sure how that affects the respiratory health of the people around the area. So I would like to get more confirmation that the substance that's being used is not of a health hazard.
It's natural botanical oils. The toxicology has been submitted not to the entire town as a supplement to our application. The town has also engaged I'll call it an odor expert, but a peer review to look at that, and that will be addressed in the special permit hearing. I still believe, though it may be a concern for the town, it's a concern that's under the special permit granting authority and not the Board of Health, as there's nothing in your bylaws or in Mass General laws that address that.
I was just going to say, I'm looking at a part of the Mass General law that addresses the trade and employment attended with noisome and injurious odors. Are you familiar with that section?
Which I guess I don't know all the Mass General laws.
I believe it's Part 1, Title 16, Chapter 11.
Okay,
Section 143, that's the trade and employment attended with noisome and injurious odors, assignment of places, prohibition, and appeal. And it, I can read it.
sure,
if you like.
I don't have it in front of me.
It says, no trade or employment which may result in nuisance or be harmful to the inhabitants, injurious to their estates, dangerous to the public health, or may be attended by noisome and injurious odors shall be established in a city or town, except in such a location as may be assigned by the Board of Health thereof, after a public hearing has been held thereon, subject to the provisions of Chapter 40A. And such Board of Health may prohibit the exercise thereof within the limits of the city or town, or in places not so assigned in any event. Such assignment shall be entered into the records of the city or town and may be revoked when the board shall think proper. Department of Environmental Protection shall advise, upon request, the Board of Health of a city or town previous to the assignment of places for the exercise of any trade or employment referred to in this section, and any person, including persons in the control of any public land, aggrieved by the action of the Board or of Health in assigning certain places for the exercise of any trade or employment referred to in this section may, within 60 days, appeal from the assignment of the Board of Health to the department, and said department may, after a hearing, rescind, modify, or amend such assignment. Notwithstanding any provision in this section 125A of this chapter, this section shall apply to the operation of piggeries. So that is there
Yep.
in the general law.
So, and again, I refer to the fact that the selectmen have, the two peer reviews that they have voted on to retain, and they have retained, specifically, I know they've already retained and engaged an odor specialist.
Yeah.
I know that they're looking at a noise specialist as well. I can't say if they've been retained. We have experts, and our experts have presented the facts. They're all in, there's an odor plan, there's a mitigation plan as part of the special permit. It's our position that there are no harmful materials that are included there, that there is no odor that's going to leave the property. It's also our position that there is going to be no noise that leaves the property. We've hired our own sound expert that's done the study, and we have the data to back that up. So we can get into, if you have specific questions, Sarah, as a civil engineer, can answer them, but our experts have given you their position that they do not, neither odor or noise is an issue, and the selectman has engaged a peer review to make sure that that's accurate information. And again, I still believe this is outside of that.
I don't believe that the experts had spoken to the Board of Health, have they? And given us accurate information? You're saying that we have been getting that information.
You have it all in the special permit package.
Right.
You have the full submission in front of this board.
The permit package specifies the different options that are available for the different containers, for the different, ventilation system. It doesn't tell us exactly what is gonna be put on there. It has nothing that tells us about the exact noise content of those ventilators.
The ventilation fans,
In
the
each of
specs are all
Excuse me,
included.
can I finish my sentence? Any of the greenhouses, is that correct?
I wasn't sure you were done with your sentence. The fans are, all the specs for the fans are there. We've identified how many fans are there.
How about the noise level?
We verified that the noise level is not going to leave the property.
By who?
By our sound expert,
Which we
and,
don't have,
excuse me?
which we don't have,
It was submitted to the town.
which the Board of Health does not have,
It was submitted to the town prior to this meeting,
right?
as
So we don't
requested by
have-
the planning board.
So we don't really have enough information to go by from the Board of Health aspect, because we weren't given any of that information.
Can you point out where in the special permit application?
Do you have the new submission?
I don't know. What's the new?
Sarah, do you wanna come up and speak to the submission on the noise?
I have the July 2019
Um,
submission.
As there was requests specifically about noise from the planning board as part of the site plan review, and the filing deadline for that was today, and it was filed today.
Oh, okay, then so we don't have that new submission.
Well,
Or I don't have it
you
yet.
may not
The
have
board
it, but
hasn't reviewed
okay,
it yet.
I apologize, the board doesn't have it. But it is submitted to the town, it's part of the site plan review. It's also been submitted to the select board and also is available for the peer review for the select board.
That doesn't help us with our decision here today, does it?
Sarah, do you wanna speak, do you wanna address any specifics?
Well, I can, but if they haven't read the report.
Yeah.
So the, Sarah Kapinski with SK Design Group.
Can you speak a little louder, please?
Yes, Sarah Kapinski with SK Design Group. We engaged,
And
prospector
you are,
of SK Design Group.
okay.
Civil engineer on this project.
So, our team has engaged the services of a sound expert. They performed an on-site study last week where they dropped off equipment to measure the, sound levels that currently exist out there. Then they took that information back into the office and they prepared, data that states what the existing sound is on site. Then they run into a program putting in the fans and the operation that we're gonna have on our facility across the entire facility and what type of sound that will put out. Then we took that sound with the base level and compared it to the noise ordinance requirements in the town of Great Barrington. The study that you will have a chance to read will show how they did it, their methodology, and that the sound will not travel above the noise ordinance level across the property line as required by the noise ordinance. The fans that we are using are 75 decibels, which is a very minor sound. Fans are set up so that they can go on at different times depending on which greenhouses need to be evacuated. So it's not like all 27 fans will be on at the same time. They can go on at different times. But they have evaluated the situation at the worst case scenario to make sure that the sound does meet the requirements of DEP and Great Barrington Sound Ordinance.
Does that include all of the fans going at the same time?
Yes, correct. All the fans on the greenhouses and the fan on the building, correct.
So Sarah, I wanna clarify that this is separate from the independent study that the town, will conduct on both noise and odor.
So the town will hire their own noise expert to review our expert opinion, yes. So the town will have an independent study.
Okay.
The town, under the way that it works is that the town hires a peer review, so their expert will be reviewing our data. So their expert will be reviewing our odor plan, our odor mitigation plan, and their expert will be reviewing the noise plan that we put in, the noise report that was submitted today. Noise was not an issue that was raised until the planning board meeting. As soon as that issue was raised with the fans, we engaged an engineer to make sure that we had the data so we could share it with the town's peer review.
Could you walk me through exactly how the mitigation plan for odor is to be conducted?
Sure, I'm gonna
Just-
turn that, I'll turn that over to Sarah too, do you want to?
So there is, we're gonna use a misting system. So we're gonna take a proprietary solution and we're gonna dilute it 1,000 to 1 in water. And then we're gonna have nozzles placed at each one of the fans. So when the fan turns on, these nozzles will atomize the solution that comes out of there into a mist. The mist will then attract itself and connect onto the odor molecules and it will neutralize the odor. So it's not gonna mask it, but it's gonna neutralize it.
So, in layman's terms, similar to like a Febreze effect, is that what you're speaking of?
The Febreze,
Well, that type of a thing where?
no, that masks it. It's gonna completely neutralize, it's gonna completely eliminate it.
How, eliminate as in?
It eliminates the odor, the essential oils.
Adsorption.
Yes.
It's called adsorption.
That's right, because I keep saying absorption.
Yeah, it's adsorption, and basically what it does is it actually encapsulates the molecule and it neutralizes the odor. It's not a mask, it's not a covering, it's not Febreze. It's an actual scientific process, and the neutralizer is made up of botanical oils, so it's all natural, and that information was presented prior to today. So you should have the toxicity report, an environmental statement, and a list of what was in the
And how
Solution.
do the greenhouses work? How does that function? In terms of how, Is it they're completely enclosed with fans on either side?
They are completely enclosed. In your odor control report that you should have reviewed as a part of the original application, there are diagrams in there that show where the fan locations are, that they are gonna be completely enclosed, that on all the large greenhouses, there's gonna be a fan on either end, and on the smaller greenhouses, there's a fan on one end. And then the fans can either be set on timers, or they can be done manually. And again, the neutralization, odor neutralization will turn on when the fans turn on.
So there's no rolling up of the sides of greenhouses or anything like that?
There is not.
Correct, and we made that specifically clear in the submission that was today that you don't have in front of you. We
Okay.
clarified that they're gonna be fully enclosed at all times.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Peter, any questions?
No, I'm just wondering what our options are in terms of having a chance to see the other documents that were submitted.
You asked what our options are.
Oh, in terms of,
Decisions tonight, timing, and the opportunity to see the other documents that were submitted.
Let me just voice a couple of the concerns that maybe could help guide you to
Okay.
determine what our concerns are. As the Board of Health, our concerns are really, air quality for the for the residents who are close by. As you well know, dust vapors from marijuana facilities have become a great concern for causing lung problems. Mainly, there's a specific type of lung problem that is called obliterans, which has been reported to occur from people breathing in the weed dust as it dries. And then this proprietary all-natural product that's been used, apparently is called the SL4000. When you look it up on the website, it doesn't really help us determine exactly what is in it. But it comes in industrial drums, so we're talking about big drums of this liquid being sprayed onto the property, and it has to go somewhere.
So it is gonna be diluted with water, 1,000 parts water to 1 part of the solution.
Right.
So when you're looking at the data sheets that have been provided for you,
Yeah.
those data sheets are in its pure concentration level. And this is gonna be diluted, with 1,000 parts water. And it is a misting situation. So I believe in there, it also talks about that the evaporation is approximately 85%. So before, there's basically going to be minimal, if any, of the chemical that actually doesn't evaporate in the air.
And they go to the ground.
Correct.
So what happens to the groundwater over time? Does it filter right into the soil around the area? And how do you clean the soil after it's been damaged?
Sarah can also answer that one as a civil
Because we
engineer.
don't wanna have a situation where the groundwater has been affected. Many people, as you all know, Housatonic water is not the best water in the world. And maybe people are starting to wanting to put wells in. That is our jurisdiction. So I do have concerns about groundwater. And I also have concerns about the amount of water that's being used. As you well know, if you do research over other states who have marijuana facilities, the number one thing is they require a whole load of water, more like 6 gallons per plant per day. And in growing seasons, more than that. So we're talking about 2 million gallons of water per year, which is what the permit is requesting. That is quite a bit of water out of Long Pond or Ground Pond, I don't know which pond it is. So does that, in peak season growing, does that decrease the pressure, the water pressure of the local residents who also need this water to survive?
Okay, so there's a bunch of questions in there. I'm gonna let Sarah, as the civil engineer, talk about groundwater and also talk about water, but I also just wanna keep the board on task that there is no jurisdiction over Housatonic Water. So we have a letter from Housatonic Water saying that they have ample supply to serve. Outside of that, I don't want to address that because it's outside, I can't tell you if that's gonna change the pressure. But one, it's not something that is in front of the board, and two, we have a letter from the company stating that it's adequate supply to serve. But Sarah can answer the groundwater and watering questions.
So we have done we've done percolation tests and observation holes for our septic design, and we've also done a number of test pits on the site. We've determined that in the area of the greenhouses, that seasonal high groundwater is at 5 feet. So that's 5 feet down, the water rises once a year. So actual groundwater is much deeper than that. So we're using a system that's going to mist a solution of 1,000 parts of water to 1 part of solution, mist it into the air to atomize and neutralize the odor molecules. And whatever residual that doesn't evaporate will land on the ground. So this is a very small percentage. So you're gonna have a sprinkle of water on the ground. So that water will then, similar to a septic system that doses a septic field, perks into the ground into your groundwater, that requires 4 feet of separation for Title V. We now have 5 feet of separation in which that water, surface water that hits, has a chance to filter through the natural ground to become clean, to get into a seasonal high groundwater situation. Again, the amount of water that actually touches the ground, it's not a garden hose, and we're not pouring a solution onto the ground. It's a diluted, misted solution that will sprinkle onto the ground.
So, what happens after 10 or 15 years
Of what?
of this constant misting?
Well, the solution's biodegradable, number one. So, and the water's clean when it gets down. So no matter if you do this for 100 years, it's still, the process is going to be the same. One, the product's gonna biodegrade, and the same standards that she just talked about, cleaning the water before it gets to the seasonal high groundwater level.
And you're confident that this would, similar to a septic system, that the natural elements in the earth would filter this?
Because it is a diluted
Yeah.
proprietary solution, and because it is a biodegradable solution, yes, we're confident that it won't impact.
And has this product been used anywhere else in this application before for masking?
So yes, there are, so the NCM, who's the odor company that's gonna install this, is countrywide, okay? They do a lot of work in the landfill and garbage industry, and they use similar systems to encapsulate and to neutralize the odor. They also do have marijuana facilities, but there are none that are actually growing in Massachusetts right now. They're working with others, and there was some lists in the application, but that they're actually not at something that's generating odor at this point in Massachusetts. So they have no qualms that this is gonna work. They
used it in other states in the same application, but not here.
Correct.
Are there questions that you'd like me to relay about this chemical to the town manager to have them incorporate in their assessment of the odor control study?
Just what I had,
The health concerns
the
related
health
to this,
concerns related to the misting.
confirming that it's
missing odor.
biodegradable.
Yes.
Also, the product says it's caution, it says flush eyes and wash skin for 15 minutes. And it says inhalation, remove from exposure, if uncomfortable, obtain medical attention.
And that's for the
That's-
non-diluted chemical, the
Exactly.
non-diluted
So-
solvent.
What happens over time is what my concern is, and how does that affect?
Well, I think Sarah answered, Sarah answered the question that over time, number one, it's biodegradable, and number two, it dissipates as it goes through the natural soils there. You're obviously not taking her information as an answer, so I suggest that you ask the peer review.
Mhm. We probably don't have jurisdiction, but we do have jurisdiction that we have set laws on, for example, nail salons. So working within this drying facility and this extraction facility within the building, I'd like to know what kind of protection these workers have and how does that protect them and their health.
Yeah, so to clarify, there is no jurisdiction, but similar to the greenhouses, there is a vent area a vent fan that will extract the air out of the drying facility as well. It's a ductless system, it's a fan very similar to the greenhouses.
So they use butane, which is carcinogenic.
So that's actually in Sarah, do you want to explain so that's actually in the lab for extraction, not in the drying area, and that's a self-contained lab.
So who brings it in?
It's delivered to the site as with any other shipment. It's done within proper
What happens
protocols.
to the workers who are in the facility, in the lab?
They're trained on how to do the process. They're also governed by the CCC, which is the Cannabis Control Commission. We've also sent the lab specs and all the chemicals to the fire chief. The fire chief has reviewed them and also the storage plan and had no further questions. He was satisfied.
And where does the ventilation go for these lab facilities?
It is ventilated outside, and each one of the vents will have an odor mitigation plan associated with it.
No, all these are guidelines established by the Cannabis Control Commission.
Correct.
Right, and there's plans for disposal of chemicals and storage and all that, I did see that in here.
I did read through their recommendations. I didn't really see anything that is a very generalized term that refers you back to the Massachusetts codes. It's not very specific, is what I'm trying to say. And what I'm concerned about is, as you well know, marijuana growing in such large quantities is a relatively new type of industry that we don't really know a whole lot about. And I'm very cautious about submitting a recommendation for something that I don't have a whole lot of good information.
If you don't feel comfortable submitting a recommendation, I just look for the facts that it's non-jurisdictional, because again, it's not anything that is in your regulations. It is also nothing about, there's no bylaws that you've created that address this. I'm not saying it's not within your authority to create these, but without complaints, without absent these bylaws or regulations, it's non-jurisdictional, just like my other two applications were.
So getting back to Peter's question on what our options are, you can decide to wait to make a recommendation, positive or negative, or no recommendation tonight till you get more information. Namely, the two assessments that are being conducted by the town, the odor and noise assessment. You can wait to hear what public comment brings up, and we can reconvene at a later date and make a recommendation then. Or, like Kate said, you can take that it's non-jurisdictional and pass it along like you would any non-jurisdictional special permit application and just pass it along without recommendation.
Well, I'm in favor of getting more information for sure, but seeing as we have quite a crowd assembled here tonight, I'd like to open up for a comment period, if that's okay with.
Do we have to close this before we open?
No, it's not a public.
And before, if I can, before you just make a blanket statement that you want more information, I would request that you make that very specific to us on what the jurisdiction is and what information is lacking in our special permit presentation in the submission that is lacking to answer those, because right now there's no other information I'm going to give you, because our experts have all weighed in, they've given everything to you. There's no jurisdiction for this board, so I don't know what I'd be giving more information on. The only thing that's lacking is a peer review, which was hired by the selectmen for their purpose for the special permit hearing.
Right, and I think because, as you mentioned, in terms of strictly jurisdictional issues, there's not a lot of technical things, but there are a lot of concerns that we have. And I think because there is that part in the general law talking about odor, I think that's the chief one. So I think the additional information that we want to see is just confirmation that, that all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed, and that the claims that are made are substantiated or verified to the degree that they can be. I think that's what I mean by additional information.
So can I request that the board makes a statement, sends a letter or correspondence to the select board saying it's non-jurisdictional, however, we reserve our rights on the 2 items that you requested a peer review on? I mean, that seems to be what you're saying to me, you're waiting for the peer review to come back?
Well, I don't know if I'd characterize it as non-jurisdictional, because clearly in the law, we have ability to prohibit things. So I wouldn't say it's blanket non-jurisdictional.
And we haven't seen the special permit application details.
The site review plan.
Yeah.
The site plan, you have this, you have the,
I understand that we have it, we haven't seen it.
no, you have the special permit application. What's in front of you tonight, you have it. The request was, the additional information came out of site plan review, which is a total different, but we sent it in and filed it also with the selectmen because the information, I'm sure, will be requested at that point, and it is also needed for the peer review.
Well, I would still like to hear some comments from the public before we make any official.
Are you
I-
done with
I
your,
just
I
have-
would like to continue
Yeah.
your conversation here
Yeah.
before you.
I would also like to get information concerning, studies that have been done using this product and how it affects, the groundwater over time. You know, you've been using this substance for many years now, so you should have some, I know, environmental data on how safe this is.
We've submitted that, and you should already have that. The SDS report is submitted. The toxicology and environmental statements that are attached to this product are part of that. That was a secondary submission that was made about 3 weeks ago.
I don't have that.
Read it yet.
I read through the whole.
Well, if you have that, it came in the same package that the description of the property that you were, the solvent that you were just looking at, the Aerol 4. It was a letter.
You mean
that-
SL 4000?
Yeah, it was attached to that document when we submitted.
Okay, that wasn't given to us.
Okay, well, again, we submitted it to the town. It went to the.
It was not submitted to the Board of Health, this is just something that I acquired on my own.
I can tell you the date that we submitted if you give me a minute too, but that was it was prior to even, it was within a week prior to the planning board meeting, cause it was already available at the planning board meeting. So, that was about 3 weeks ago. And that was submitted as an update submission to our special permit application. That information is also in what was submitted today, so you'll have it twofold once you track down
So this particular
packages.
chemical, it says,
Which particular chemical?
the SL 4000, which is what they're using to mist.
Mhm.
It specifically says do not take internally, avoid contamination of food, for industrial use only, keep out of reach of children, do not mix with anything but water, avoid strong oxidizing agents, none of which are very, friendly.
But that's in its pure concentrate form.
Yes.
So if I were to release smoke into the air and it's diluted 1,000 times in this room, is it any less harmful to those who breathe it?
Again, I'm not an engineer, that's why we hire engineers to provide the
But I am a
reports.
physician, and I have that training.
Okay? I didn't know that you were trained to evaluate other people's chemicals, or solvents, but.
Well, not to
I mean,
get-
I don't know what else I can provide the board if you don't take our expert data as, evidence,
Well, I think we'd like to have everything that we're missing.
okay?
And there are concerns, we voiced them, but I would like to hear from the people who are assembled here before we make any official announcements. So usually we have our citizen speak time towards the end, but I'd like to open it up now. I would just ask that you would state your name and address, and we would try to keep the comment time to about 3 minutes. And also, the, this notion of what's jurisdictional to the Board of Health, if we can keep things to that, that would be very helpful.
My name is my name is Mitch Greenwald. I'm an attorney. I practice in Pittsfield. I represent the Rubert and the Forbes families, who are also here. And in response to what you said, in response to Kate's continued exhortation that you stick to the task, let's talk again about Chapter 111, Section 143, which is absolutely part of the task and absolutely creates jurisdiction. And I'm not going to read the whole thing again. I just want to emphasize some of the language. It talks about nuisance, harmful to the inhabitants, which certainly includes the workers, injurious to their, dangerous to the public health, this is the Board of Health, or may be attended by noisome or injurious odors. This is all in the section that talks about what you can do. You have the power to require a particular location or prohibit the use altogether. So that's part of your task. And according to the statute, and this is not your normal procedure because this is not a normal situation, but according to the statute, you have to do that after a public hearing held pursuant to Chapter 48, as if it were a zoning hearing. Notice to abutters, publication, the whole thing. So our position is that needs to happen not really prior to a recommendation to the planning board, or to the select board rather, which I think it's a good idea to not make or make negatively at this stage. But independent of that, you have to go through this other process. So I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, on that very strongly. And let me make a few other points. First of all, there was at least one, maybe more, misstatement that the greenhouses can't be rolled up. If you have your applications in front of you, look at page 5 of 25 of the narrative, where it states clearly that the greenhouses can be rolled up. I can't fact check everything that was said, but it shouldn't require a peer reviewer to pick that up. And while we're on the peer reviewer, it's not just the peer reviewer's job to evaluate what they say. The peer reviewer may say there are things that need to be looked at that were not even mentioned as part of the application. The peer reviewer is a respected fellow professional that the select board and you, if you choose to go that route, the select board makes that person available, can ask all the questions that you want that you're not getting answered. And there may be other experts as well. So the expert of the applicant is not the only expert. Finally, I want to leave you with the thought that the material that I've read in ramping up on all this, as we all have to do since it's new for all of us, indicates that among the odor control mechanisms available, this is only one, and not necessarily the best one. There's also carbon filtration, HEPA filtration, and other things. And I've seen statements by experts that this one's well down the list. So I don't want to take other people's time. I don't want to leave you with that. And I would ask you on behalf of my clients, don't make a recommendation at this time or make a negative recommendation based on incomplete information, and prepare to hold a public hearing according to the statute. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, ma'am.
Becky has my card if you need it.
I'd like to thank all of you for your thoughtful questions.
Could I have your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Susan Lord. I'm a physician here in town,
Address, please.
203 Highland Street in Housatonic. And I'd like to thank you for your questions because it's the first meeting I've been to where those kind of questions have actually been asked, so I'm very appreciative. And I'd like to read a few comments. I'd like to start with about how the process of making this important decision is being handled from my vantage point as a citizen. I learned about this proposal late in the game, but I have done considerable research about these issues. There are a lot of issues, and many involve complex federal, state, and town regulations involving safety of our land and our people. Every meeting I've attended so far, there has been a vote refining this agreement with Fulcrum early in the meeting, and no public input was allowed until the end of the meeting. There seems to be no coordination between the various boards of Selectmen, Planning Board, Conservation Board, and Public Health. Each committee seems to be in the dark and deferring to the others. For example, the Conservation Board stated that they did not have purview over this proposal, even though groundwater quality is in their mission statement on their website. Furthermore, they stated that they do have responsibility for polluted water supply, but only after the pollution has occurred. This makes no sense. We all know firsthand how difficult, if not impossible, it is to clean up after damage has been done. Given the track record of large corporations destroying the earth and damaging people's health, I'm astounded that there is not more skepticism and critical analysis of this proposal. In none of the meetings I've attended has there been a voice of concern, until tonight, of protection of our land, our water, our children, our community, and even the thoughtful economic development of Housatonic. Where is the voice of legal counsel to counter the facile reassurance that Fulcrum cares about our health and our quality of life? Now I'd like to speak as a physician and caretaker of public health. I assume you all share my concerns in protecting the people of our community. I invite you to be the voice of that protection and the voice for our future. When Native Americans made a decision, they always asked how that decision would affect the next 7 generations, and that's a pretty good rule of thumb. I ask you, the Board of Health, to be the champions of public health. Dig deep, be thorough, and demand that a rigorous, comprehensive impact study be done that addresses all of the issues. Up until now, that impact study is really just around odor and noise. It doesn't include all the others, which are light pollution, water contamination, pesticides, herbicides, the devaluation not only of our property values, but also our way of life. Each of these issues creates tremendous stress on our mental and physical health, and I'll give you an example as far as noxious odors. They go to the most ancient part of our brain to signal danger, and it puts us into fight or flight. So if there is an unpleasant smell around all the time, people will go into fight or flight and cause chronic stress. And as I'm sure those of you who are health practitioners know, chronic stress is at the base of all the chronic disease that we see today.
I hate to interrupt you, but we do have some of the time limit, so if you can finish up.
Okay. So just these stressors have been thoroughly researched and found to be the root of chronic disease. If we can't make democracy work in our town by allowing all voices to be taken seriously, then this is a sad day for democracy. Our leaders must lead in protecting all of us. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Yes, sir.
I'm Douglas Stevenson, 351 North Plain Road, Housatonic. Just a couple points. One, we heard tonight that we don't need to worry about the whatever the product is that's used in the misting process, because it's diluted, so we don't need to worry about it. Whether you dilute it or you don't dilute it, it's still there. Whether you dilute gasoline or not dilute it, it's still gasoline. So it's still there. Whether you dilute poison or you don't dilute poison, it's still there. So you still need to worry about it. And then, well, it's mist and it evaporates, so you don't need to worry about it. Whether it evaporates or it doesn't evaporate, if you evaporate it, then you aerosolize it. You puts it in the air. Geez, then you still got to worry about it, because then we're breathing it. If it evaporates, then we're all breathing it. And everyone in this room is going to be breathing it. We should be more worried about it if we're aerosolizing. That should be raising red flags for everybody, especially the Board of Health. Thank you for asking your questions tonight. It was encouraging to me to finally hear a public official ask questions.
Thank you, sir.
Maureen, I live on 9 High Street.
Maureen, what's your last name?
Quigley?
Quigley.
So these were a couple of things from Housatonic Waterworks webpage, that safe, clean drinking water is essential to the health and well-being of all. That's why our highest priority is to provide you and your family with high-quality drinking water. It's hard to imagine running out of water, but it could happen. Between 1950 and 2000, the population in the U.S. doubled while public health demand for water tripled. The extra stress on water supplies and distribution systems threatens our health as well as our environment. The good news is that there's plenty of small things you can do to conserve water and help avert water shortages. And that comes from Jim Mercer's website. And they also list several things how you can conserve water. However, Jim Mercer has signed that he can provide this water to Fulcrum. And he's saying he's able to provide an average of 365 gallons per water per day to run the plant, when the average citizen uses 100 gallons per water per day. That's over 3.5 times the amount that the average citizen uses daily. And this is just an estimate. He has a vested interest because he has a large monetary gain from agreeing to this. 3, my question is, has there been a third-party, independent, fully comprehensive impact study that verifies Jim Mercer's assessment that that is correct and that there will be no impact on the quality or quantity of the water provided to the families served, being that is the priority of Housatonic Waterworks? And lastly, when asked Jim Mercer whether he would live in the surrounding area of this proposed project, his response was, "No, I would not buy anything near an area that was zoned for industrial purposes." And on behalf of the mission statement of Great Barrington, it says the town of Great Barrington is committed to providing quality services to the entire community through good planning and cost-effective measures. So from my understanding, it seems as though Fulcrum is using their own experts, which is a huge conflict of interest. We don't have enough information at all, and Jim Mercer's signing a statement that he can provide this water. No one has confirmed any of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hubert, 70 Division Street. I was listening to Attorney McCormick's explanation of the odor control system, and she stated it wasn't an odor masker. And right in the application, it says the fragrance is an odor masker. Secondly, I've been doing research since May on this topic, and I came across documents with regard, if you go in on the other side as a marijuana manufacturer, safety procedures for your employees. And so I downloaded marijuana industry hazards. So this is for the employees. Now keep in mind, this facility is going to be directly across the street from young families. So some of those hazards are mold, sensitizers, allergens, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, indoor air quality, pesticides, disinfectants and other cleaning chemicals, nutrients and corrosive chemicals. And then there's physical hazards in working in the industry. So I'd like to submit this for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, it was stated that there's been some expert work done, and that's a little confusing to me because on August 30th, I communicated with our town manager. And I said, when you can, provide me with the names of the experts that are going to be used. And Mr. Prahensky said to me on Friday, he said, I was only given direction and approval to seek consultants based on my executive summary, which we're aware of, requesting the same. At that time, he says, I'm still in the process of getting proposals at this time. Now, keep in mind, this is Friday, August 30th. August 31st is Saturday. September 1st is Sunday. Labor Day is September 2nd. So today is September 5th. And I expressed my concern to him. I says, well, Mark, you know, you're not going to have enough time to get somebody in here, do a thoughtful assessment. And he did say, he said, I agree, it's not likely we will be able to have a review completed in time for September 9th. So I'm a little taken aback that something's been done already. I do know Fulcrum did contact a family across the street regarding a noise assessment. But to my knowledge, that person declined that assessment. I will be on the phone with the town manager tomorrow and find out what is going on. Because he was fully aware that I wanted those names, and to have them in writing tell me it was highly unlikely they were going to be able to engage anybody. Because he said we still need to get the proposals, request them to receive the funds from the applicant, and execute a contract with the consultants before they even begin. So I'm a little bewildered by this. Also, I did contact Salisbury, Mass. And Holyoke, Mass. And because in the application, there's a list of towns that, the odor for waste management, that sort of thing. But they cited Salisbury, Mass. And Holyoke, Mass. So I communicated with them, and I have that in writing. And I just want to point out before I end, I did contact Franklin, Mass. I spoke with their town manager and their town planner. They have a facility there called NITA, which I believe is in the process right now of changing hands. NITA, there was issues with odor there. NITA is not on its first odor control system. It's not on its second odor control system. It's on its third odor control system because of issues. That was not nearly as big as the facility that's going to be in a residential neighborhood. This is off of I-495, away from residences, and there's still was.
Just for clarification, this is another
Mhm.
marijuana growing
Yeah.
facility?
And it's not greenhouses, and they had trouble with odor. So the name of the town manager there is Jamie Helen, and the town planner, her last name is Love. And I got their responses in writing as well.
And it's a similar operation with greenhouses?
No, this is more a closed facility, not greenhouses. Okay, but what I'm saying is, you see these enclosed facilities, it would go to figure it'd be much easier to control odor inside a closed facility as opposed to greenhouses, whether the sides are down or
And
not.
so they've had to deal with complaints?
Yep. Okay, but feel free to should check it yourself, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name's Garfield Reed, 107 Castle Hill Avenue, Great Barrington. I have some concerns. I'm not really happy that that town is going this direction and that they're putting this next to where people live. I was wondering how long the study was done that they had. I guess you guys had conducted a test with the noise. How long was it run for? Was it half an hour? Was it an hour? I'm sure the fans will run longer than that. And was it done with all 27 fans at the same time? And if it was, I'm sure it's going to be quite loud. And who's going to come out at 3 o'clock in the morning to take care of this issue if people are complaining? I haven't heard anything like that or anyone doing anything like that. The gentleman who's doing when I was at the first meeting of the planning board, said the only facility they had was in Oregon. Did not find out where it was in Oregon, so it means there's nothing in Massachusetts. So we don't know how it's going to work. But in Massachusetts, and they haven't done marijuana, it sounds like they've done only garbage, etc. And also, I was concerned about the peer review, thinking I hope it's just more than just a review, and someone will indeed do an independent study, and not just look over what these fine folks have said. Those are my concerns.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Connor-Shumsky. I live at 5 Deer Trail. I've lived in Great Barrington and Housatonic for 30 years. 19 years ago, I chose to build my house in Housatonic. As many of you know me, I still work at 2 nonprofits for over 30 years in Southern Berkshire. I've been an advocate for families in this area to enable all families to live here and thrive in our community, no matter what economic ability you have. I've heard a groundswell from many of the residents calling me, asking me if I know. I want to do, the main issue that just keeps coming up over and over again is odor and the air quality. Fulcrum will be using these chemicals, and the chemicals will be pushed out into the community, as well as the mold spores. And I have heard concerns about children and residents and them inhaling that. Will I, along with my neighbors, are we gonna have to live with our windows closed so we don't get the smell and the exhaust chemicals to permeate all the neighborhoods? I appreciate that you have asked questions and asked for input, have so many things, and I just want you to know that I did attend the planning board, and when I heard about the August 22nd, the odor expert and the exhaust system and the proprietary formula, yes, I looked it up, and as well as your doctor on the committee, the SL400, when my eyes were instantly drawn to inhalation. It says remove from exposure. If discomfort occurs and persists, obtain medical attention. Do we know the amount of SL4000 that's going to be pumped into our neighborhoods in Housatonic? We're counting on the Board of Health to protect us. One other thing I wanted to tell you, and this is just a personal story, when my youngest one returned home from college in May, it was ironic. On her first night coming back to Housatonic, she said to me, "Mom, smell the air. It doesn't smell like this in the city." And you know what? Those words are haunting me now, because we are expecting the Board of Health, and we have built our houses. We want to live here, and I think you, as well as I do, love the Berkshires for the clean air. So I'm asking you to really make sure you do your homework. You tell me why a family would want to move into the community if we have this plan, and the smells and the chemicals that are being pumped out. So I implore you to do your homework and consider the air quality. I want you to know that our children, asthmatics, and elders are counting you as leaders to safeguard our health. Thank you.
Trevor Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. I'd like to thank the Board of Health for an excellent discussion and some really good questions. Thank you very much for that. There are just a few aspects that sort of draw to my attention after this discussion, and various things that I think would be very important to ask of NCM in particular about this odour control. Bearing in mind this odour has been mentioned in many cannabis articles as being rather like a whole host of dead skunks for the best part of 2 months during the harvesting season. And it doesn't take a genius to actually unearth quite a lot of that reporting in California, in Oregon, in Florida in particular, and also in Colorado as well. So one of the questions that I would ask, and I would like the board just to reflect on that, is how many facilities is this odour control system they've suggested? How many facilities is it actually operating in? And I believe the answer may well be 1, and I think it's in Bend, Oregon. But I'm not aware of exactly what the local community feel about that misting system. Perhaps we ought to know. I think the whole aspect of the misting and the chemical concern is a worry, and Dr. Chang actually identified that extremely well. I'd like to follow up on that by basically asking what the half-life, what the degradable life of these chemicals actually is, because looking at SL4000, and particularly some of the products, and I've done some research on this, it seems that the degradable life of some of these items, in as far as we can tell in this particular substance, could well be between several days to several weeks, which I would think allows it a lot of time to actually get into the ground and potentially into groundwater. So that is a concern. I'd also like to address the amount of water that is being proposed, upwards, I understand, of 2 million gallons a year, bearing in mind that 2 million gallons will be in a relatively short period of time during the summer months of the growing season. Now, all of us who have Housatonic Waterworks water will be aware that pressure is a major problem from time to time, and the continual supply of that water can be an issue. So my wife actually contacted Jim Mercer, and we have the texts of that discussion, as to what would happen at a time of drought. Who would have the priority? Would it be Fulcrum, or would it be the residents of Housatonic? The answer, 4 question marks. Well, I think those are very important 4 question marks, and they're clearly questions that have to be answered before any decision is actually taken. Thank you very much.
Julian Stanton, 69 Division Street. I really didn't think I'd be standing up here tonight, but from what I've heard, the odor control system is mixed in with water and sprayed with using fans. And they've also said the fans won't be running all the time. So does that mean that the odor control will not be in use all the time? It's just something that I was thinking about. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sarah Yo. Hi. And I live about 1/8 of a mile from the location, and this is nothing
I didn't
really.
get your address.
What?
I didn't get your address.
I didn't say my address.
Okay. Can you state it, please?
16 Van Dusen.
Thank you.
This is not very profound, but I just want to make sure everyone realizes that Nolan's property is not a sophisticated industrial buzzing place. I believe there's like 2 people in there, and Lanou's there, but I think you own your property, right?
My uncle's.
Yeah. So, you know, it's not a buzzing, sophisticated situation there. And I just don't understand, rather than trying to make it work, why can't another location be used that you look at the deal and you go, yeah, this is gonna work. The water's gonna work, the odor's gonna work, so on and so forth. That's in an area that it's not gonna infringe on families and neighbors and all these problems. I just don't understand that, you know, it's a very unsophisticated industrial park. And it makes me a little leery of this company coming in to this particular place. I just think it's a little bit unnerving. And, you know, of course, the smell. I mean, everyone knows that the smell is outrageous when you grow inside or out. I just think that another location would be, you know, do it right, you know? Don't have your neighbors against you and so on and so forth. There's gotta be places that they just wouldn't have this kind of problems. Everybody's trying to figure out the water. Everybody's trying to figure out the odor. Everything, you know, what about, I mean, this is gonna be a big construction job, right? It shouldn't be there. And the value of my property, you know where I live. I'm just sick about it. You know, because it's my asset. And I don't wanna see the value go down, because who's gonna buy a house in, next to a, you know, marijuana production? I'm not against marijuana, I'm just saying, let's look at this logically.
I understand these concerns. I'll have to hold you there for time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bruce Lobert, 70 Division Street. One of the topics that's been really focused on tonight is the solution. And I do recall at the board meeting being touted by the person giving his presentation, and that it was drinkable in its diluted form. And with the concerns coming up here about that solution, I'm going, it's a trust factor with their consultants. So the board really needs to look at everything that's a concern here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Can I just make one last comment, which might not be relevant, it might be, but I'm a licensed foster mother, and as it stands now, I will not be able to foster. because of the closeness and, you know, to the children.
Seeing no more comments, do you have anything to add in light of that?
Only that it's clear that we need to get some more information and have a chance to look at the application and the site plan, but I'm wondering if the people who have proposed it need to also give us a little feedback to things they heard.
So the,
I don't know if that's
Questions?
an option.
Do you have questions for SK Design or Kate McCormick?
No.
I do.
Okay.
I spoke with the chief, science officer for this, the state of Arizona, Department of Environmental Quality. And I talked to this person about marijuana farming and what do they do in their state. This person provides the permit for the state of Arizona. And this person said, you know, why aren't we using carbon filtering? Why is that? Is it too expensive? I don't understand, why aren't we using something that is more appropriate from other states?
So there will, when you look at what was submitted today, there are in the, carbon filter is gonna be used in conjunction inside the warehouse, inside the manufacturing facility. But our odor experts feel that this is the best way to treat it. They're not recommending, carbon. It has nothing to do with cost. It has to do with effectiveness. And, we spend a lot of time, energy looking at different odor companies, different, process, and this is the process that we feel is most effective. And that's the plan as of now. We can further discuss this once we get some peer review that might give us different suggestions. But carbon will be used, carbon filter will be used in the vestibule and in the hallway in the manufacturing area in addition to the vent fans, and you'll see more detail on that in the submission that was done today.
Okay. Number two is that if you look at the recent publication from PubMed, I reviewed several journals about health hazards associated with cannabis plant production, and what is concerning out there is that there are pathogenic species of mold that can occur that are breathed in because of the drying process and the extraction process. There's also concerns about the organic dust, bioaerosol, pollen, allergies, volatile organic compounds, psychoactive substances, noise, ultraviolet radiation, and they feel that the quality control of the interior environment for these processing plants are not where it needs to be. There's still a lot of research that needs to be done. So that's why I'm asking about what kind of protective equipment are being used in those places. And I'd like to know, because I think that's really important for our citizens who are going to be working in that environment.
So, you know, again, I circle back to the fact that if these are public health concerns and this board has the authority to create a bylaw, I welcome a bylaw on marijuana. A lot of other towns in the Commonwealth have created it under the Mass General Law Authority, but those are not addressed at this point. We could go into specifics, but again, it's not jurisdictional in front of this board at the moment.
That doesn't answer my question. So, the other question I have, will there be heating lamps? Since, as you all know, the growth of marijuana is best at a temperature of 75 to 86 degrees, and over 88 degrees or less than 60 degrees decreases the production of marijuana. So I was wondering if there will be any kind of heating in those.
None.
There won't be.
No, nor artificial light.
And
There's
will
no
there
grow
be
lights.
in the future?
No?
So is it just
Can
the
you,
fans
do you
that,
have that in writing somewhere, in the permit?
I believe we say that there's no artificial,
Lighting, and I'm not remembering exactly.
Forever, or is it just?
yeah, no, forever, that's what's being built here.
and so that does raise a good point, how do you regulate temperature in the greenhouses? Is it just the fans that use?
It is
Just the fans. When it gets to a certain temperature, the fans come on and,
In terms of,
purges the air.
purges the air, yes, that's the word.
that's for cooling purposes, and that'll suffice too for if it gets too cool, or the greenhouse mitigates that?
The greenhouse, I mean, it's just like a very typical greenhouse anywhere. You know, natural light, it's gonna be an opaque plastic, so the natural light will keep the heat in, and then when it gets too hot in there, the air will purge through the fans. But it is an all-natural process. There is no artificial, component to it.
For heating as well?
Yeah, for heating.
Right, just the fans. Anything further?
I'm sorry?
Any further?
So I think I've identified the concerns that this board has, and I'll send them to you to double check tomorrow. If there are questions that you'd like me to pass along to a different department or board or town manager. But do you have any specific questions for me or Locke before we end this discussion?
Well, my only, from the comments we've heard tonight, from other comments from other board members, I think the biggest issue that's particularly jurisdictional to us is this issue of odor. And I think there's definitely been plans submitted, but yet I don't feel comfortable just accepting them carte blanche. I'd like to see some more information, or from what the town is said to do, but it sounds like the town it's gonna be a process to have that done. So I don't see how we could make a recommendation one way or another without that information. That's kind of the main point that I'm taking away tonight. So without that information, I'm of the mind that we don't pass this along.
Okay. Would you like to clarify that you will make a recommendation at some point?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah, I think we should,
okay,
once we see that.
okay, so you're just holding off on a recommendation now?
I think that's the best course of action.
Okay, so
How do
that's,
you feel about that?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very interested in basing it on the science that can be presented about the toxicity of that mist if someone breathes it in over a period of time. I mean, I read the report, there was nothing in there that was conclusive about it.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the board should know all that information.
I would like to add, I know water has been brought up in terms of the Houstonic Water Company, and I'd just like to clarify that we don't have specific jurisdiction over them, because they're a public water source, but where can people go to? Is it the EPA for any specific concerns about that?
Is it too late to say anything?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Karen Passmore, 317 North Plain Road. I wanted to, well, Dr. Chang, you kind of reminded me of something I read, that there's a need for 70% humidity, along with all the gallons and gallons of water and the consistent high temperature. And I think that's not a very healthy environment. It's not a natural environment. It seems to me that this greenhouse is going to be sort of like an artificial swamp environment. And I don't know if that's, it's not been healthy historically for silk workers. Historically, I just don't know. And I also think it will generate molds. And is it artificially maintained at 70% humidity? That's very high. I just wanted to ask.
Well, there is data out.
Okay.
That's published this summer in different journals that talks about the mold and how it affects the workers there. It's already published. There is data.
then that's why I'm concerned. Thank you. Thank you for all your research, thank you.
Hi there, my name is Elizabeth Berliner. I live at 87 Division Street, and I am about 1,000 yards from where this plant is going to be put in if it's approved. I heard the comment about the 75 decibels in terms of the noise. I have specific questions. Is that one fan? Is that all the fans? I think that it's very important that we also consider the noise levels in terms of our health. Because if we're gonna be hearing that 24/7 with them kicking on and off and on and off and on and off, I don't need to illustrate. Everyone has a good imagination. Thank you.
Can you go back to the water thing you were saying about the EPA and kind of, so if there's a water concern and you guys don't have jurisdiction over that, can you I think it's really important, so what as citizens do we need to do?
You need to contact, we have a specific contact.
Right, so Housatonic Waterworks is a public water company, but it's a private water company, but it's a public water supply. So it doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of the Board of Health. So if you have concerns about that water supply, you would need to either contact Housatonic Waterworks or DEP.
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 Right, because EPA is federal.
I believe so, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So DEP, okay,
DEP.
thank you.
So yes, so back to our conversation. I think we should hold off.
So I will pass along to the select board that you're still deliberating.
Yes.
They're gonna open their public hearing on September 9th, so we'll get back to them with our final recommendation at a later date.
Yes.
But-
Can we also pass along that we strongly urge them to expedite the process of whatever studies they're going to do?
Yeah, so I spoke with the town manager this afternoon and he doesn't believe that the special permit hearing will conclude September 9th, since they also have information that will still be outstanding. So I think their next meeting after September 9th is the 23rd, which is before our next meeting. So we might need to hold a special meeting to
Sure.
review the additional information and make our recommendation before the select board concludes their public hearing.
Okay. That sounds like the correct course of action at this point. Okay. Very good. Any further comments before we move on?
I'd just like to make one further comment, if I may, just for consideration. And that is a question, I think, for NCM in particular, and it may be something you want to pass on to the board. Given everything that I've read about the problem of odour control in the cannabis industry, and that's from cannabis publications, I'm a little surprised that when you look at NCM's website, there is absolutely zero reference to any work that they do in the marijuana odour control industry. And I find that a little surprising. I'm surprised because given the level of interest, I would have thought that would be very much at the top of their list of what they would like to publicise if it was a successful way of dealing with odour control in the way that they say it is. But there is absolutely zero reference on their website to any work they do in the marijuana industry. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Heather Bello, Berkshire Eagle. Question probably for Kate and Sarah. Do we have a name of that greenhouse out in Bend, Oregon? Is it possible to? Is it a reference somewhere that we could get hold of?
I can contact you, I don't
Okay.
have it off the top.
That's fine. Okay, and one other question. There's a compound called metazine that I saw in the data list, and it's a patented compound that's part of the solution, or is that? Am I reading that correctly? It was in something submitted to the town.
That's the proprietary material that's in the solution.
Okay, So we don't have the list of what's in the medicine, but we have the list of what's in the solution up to a point. So, up to what's proprietary.
I think the Aero 400 is medicine, is I believe that.
It's an odor neutralizing compound.
So that's the neutralizer, and then there's the oils which mask, is that correct? So it's sort of a combination of masking and neutralizing?
We can get further, you're getting pretty technical with
sorry,
us,
okay.
so I think we just need to, I don't wanna misstate the exact answer. So if we can't, by reading their plan, if we can't give you the answer, then we will get you an answer.
I just wanna tell you that it does have, antifreeze in there in the wintertime,
In medicine?
in this product. So
In the
that,
heat, in the
as you
heat.
all know, that's toxic to many animals.
Okay, seeing nothing else, we're going to move on our agenda.